Welcome to episode 32 of Super States, Practices of Transformation with me, your host, Joshua Peters. Super States explores the connection of using trance states in all the ways you can use them to access personal or professional growth. And in every episode, we talk to industry leaders, world-class experts, thinkers who share the latest information and tools along with their own personal stories to help inspire you on your journey. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast through your favorite podcast host or on YouTube so you can stay up to date with new episodes. And if you enjoy this show, please give me a 5-star review. That's the best way to help us grow. This week, I speak with Ashley Lynn Caputo. Ashley is a clinical hypnotherapist, a yoga therapist, and a neurodynamic breathworker. She's going to take us from trapped in agoraphobia and anxiety to relaxing into trust and surrender. It's time to let go and unwind your mind with Ashley Lynn Caputo. Welcome to Super States. Ashley Caputo is here with me. Ashley, I'm excited to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Now, Ashley, I know you have a large variety of, different kind of modalities that you can use with your clients. But if you would describe what it is that you do and how that makes an impact in people's lives.
So my overall role, if you will, in my business, in my life, is I'm called a clinical hypnotherapist. So I also teach at the hypnotherapy school. So I use multiple modalities. I'm a yoga therapist. I teach yoga. I teach meditation. Today we're going to talk about this wonderful technique that I sometimes use in hypnotherapy, but I also use just privately with individual clients for this, and it's neurodynamic breathwork.
Yeah. So to describe to us what neurodynamic breathwork is.
To describe it. So the process itself is it's very similar to what they used to call, or still do call, holotropic breathwork, but that's a trademark, of course. So it's that rapid kind of breathing without any pauses on the inhalation or exhalation. And what it does is it really alkalizes the system, and it puts you kind of into a trance state, a hypnotic state, if you will, all by yourself naturally. So one of the cool things about just doing the neurodynamic breathwork is once you stop doing the circular breathing, you're going to come out of it pretty quickly. Unlike, plant medicines, which are wonderful too, but it can be just as deep and a very similar kind of experience, meaning that you can go to a past life. You can go to just physical catharsis, just emotional catharsis. You can go to oneness with everything. You can go to a childhood kind of thing. So the typical regressions and stuff like that, or kind of a more mystical experience, if you will, too.
And I know from some of the experience that I have had with breath work, one of the benefits is that the breath kind of does what it needs to do. Is that the same with neurodynamic breath work?
Yeah, so I've studied many different types of breath work, from the pranayama with yoga therapy to, I don't really want to say all the different types just in case I'm like insulting them in a way by choosing neurodynamic over them. But there are many out there that are very similar. What I love about neurodynamic breathwork is that we believe that you have an inner guiding intelligence, that you have, similar to my hypnotherapy training, that the client, you have all the answers within you. So I really am not putting myself on them. I'm here to facilitate, but I do not interfere. I just let a person kind of have their experience, and then I just honor whatever comes up, or if they need anything, of course, I'm there to support them. But we just trust that whatever experience you do have when you're doing this work is what you're meant to have. And it just has been, for myself, so healing and so amazing, as well as for clients too.
Would you share with us a transformational experience that you've gone through?
Personally?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't think any of us, not too many of us, really come. I guess some come in like, oh, I'm going to make money and do this business thing. But most of us healers don't come in all pretty and like, oh, this is who I so probably, it was probably about 15, 20 years ago. I was attempting to finish my second degree in college and being nursing. I was in a car accident. My car was totaled. I was not paying for health insurance. So everything just like kind of catapulted. Um, and so my life was a mess. And you would have thought that like the anxiety, I already had this existing anxiety panic. You would have thought like I'd be afraid to get into a car because I needed surgery. I couldn't, but instead I got afraid to kind of leave my house. I became totally agoraphobic. I just could not function. So this was kind of before Zoom and these kind of platforms were really popular. So obviously I was not working and earning money. And so I had a therapist that I had been seeing a little bit in the beginning when I could still barely function. And she started coming into my home, and she actually said to me, she's like, we're not making this any better. We're kind of making it worse. You're just kind of like making the neural pathways stronger by talking about them in the same way. So she suggested some hypnosis. And at first I was like, no. And then I remembered that I'd used hypnosis as a child when I had a dance injury. But, you get what you want when you're a kid, you kind of forget about it. So I was like, oh no, this sounds terrible. And so then I went to the Institute of Interpersonal Hypnotherapy here in Florida, and one of their techniques was breathwork. And I fell in love with it. It transformed my life. Everything just completely changed within a matter of months, really. But I mean, overall, it took, for everything to really fall into place a couple of years, of course. But I was out of my house within months of doing that. And so then
Wow.
I started, I love hypnosis too, but some people kind of are like, oh, hypnosis is cray cray, or, so I really like to kind of, and I do Reiki and I do yoga. So I let people come to me and say, this is what I want to do. Or this is what I want to work on. And this is the means how I want to do it. I don't say, oh, well, Reiki's better for you, or breathwork. So the people that either are just really into breathwork or are kind of a little leery of hypnosis or something, it's a great process for them. Or
That's
if they kind of don't want to share a lot more of their personal, like, you know what regression is like. So of course there's a lot of sharing and, oh, I don't want to talk to you. I'm like, okay, breathe. I don't need to know.
right. And that's what's so amazing about breath work is, at least again from my own experience, and I'm not an expert like you are, but you breathe yourself into this trance state, and then like you let that guiding part of you just kind of do what it needs to do, which you may or may not even be aware of what's happening in the
Yeah,
underneath
it's
part.
it's a wild ride, and every time is different too. It's so amazing.
You have a whole lot of different modalities that you practice. So you've mentioned yoga, Reiki, hypnotherapy. I think I saw that you do aromatherapy. So this
Sound goals,
dynamic
yeah.
dynamic breath work. So there's all of these different modalities. How did you decide to learn all of them? Like, what was the impetus for you?
Well, it was really, like I said, it was a lot of my own struggles with anxiety, which kind of, then leads to depression and insomnia. So, I decided that, and of course, I had been on a ton of medications that really weren't doing so great. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to like kind of, experience life and just figure it out and stuff like that. So when I couldn't experience life or was not experiencing life in the way that I thought was optimal, or I couldn't sleep, I'd be like, okay, so let's try this method out. And I kept like falling in love with all these different methods and modalities and stuff. And I was like, oh, well, this works for this, and this helps me with this. And so I just like kind of made it my own. I'm like, well, now I got to become certified in that, which, you don't really need to be. And there's probably about 20 other modalities that I'm not certified on that I do love too. But
And what would you say has fundamentally changed about how you work with someone from when you first started until now?
well, I think even knowing how that everybody has their own inner process. I think when we're new, when we're green about something, we kind of have this response over responsibility, if you will, feeling like, oh, I need to help them, I need to fix them, or I need to. And now I kind of just enjoy the ride. I'm like, okay, what's going to happen today? And I know that they're going to come to what they need to come to. So I do a great deal of screening, of course, to make sure everybody's safe and to make sure that it is a good match. but I don't really stress myself out about what's going to happen during the session, because I know, like, when I first started, I think, oh, we got to spend 2 hours preparing for the session. I hadn't even, I mean, of course, I'd spoken with the person, but I hadn't physically met with them. And of course, as you know, clients tell you something and then they come to the office, they're like, well, yeah, I want to quit smoking, but I have this thing that makes me smoke or whatever. So
Mhm.
there's more. So I just learned to kind of follow the client, and and trust that they're going to come to their own conclusions and their own wisdom. And it's really
I,
more about presence.
yeah, I think that's a pretty common experience. And what you just said at the end there, that presence can be sometimes what they need the most, is just to have that safe space.
Honestly, I mean, I've had one or two clients that I was like, wow, I really don't know what to say to that. And they're like, that's so healing, because I was just there. And before I would have been like, well, what do you think we need to do? So it's kind of
Mhm.
nice to just to relax and to just be and to know.
Yeah. What would you say is most misunderstood about breath work in general?
Mm. Oh, there's a lot of misunderstandings. I think a lot of folks think that it has to be done exactly a certain way, and really, while there is a certain pattern of breathing, actually everybody breathes differently. So I could say it's circular breathing, and it's more focused on the inhale than on the exhale. But if you push your exhale, you're still going. You're deoxygenating your brain, so you're still going to go there. So I think that folks kind of tend to doubt themselves and to think that it has to be done a certain way. Or some folks kind of tend to think it's going to be relaxing, and it is really not relaxing. I mean, the end result can be very relaxing, but actually getting
Hmm.
into what you'll call a trance or into an expanded state using breathwork is a lot of work. It really is.
Yeah, but like you say, and because I've experienced that where you have to. It's sometimes you have to really kind of push your into it and go into it, but then at the end there's almost this bliss state that, at least that I find, that
Mhm.
where it's almost like you don't even need to breathe.
It's funny you say that, because I quite often will go, and I kind of have a little trick for myself because I've done it so many times. If I want to push myself that way, of course, I'm open to any kind of experience that needs to come up. But I get to that bliss kind of state, and I feel like, and so it could be considered like a graph, like rebirthing kind of state, where I feel like at first I'm almost like dying, I'm choking or I'm underwater and I can't breathe, and then I push through it and I feel like I can breathe underwater, that I am one with everyone and everything, that there is nothing else that matters, that we're all one, that everything is beautiful, and it's just amazing. And then I'm like, why did I resist this?
Yeah. What are some of the reasons why someone might choose breath work over, say, hypnotherapy or Reiki?
Right. So one of the reasons is, of course, they don't want to kind of dialogue as much. They want to keep some things personal. Another thing is they're very analytical. So they feel like, oh, you're just not going to be able to take me there. And if you feel that way, then I'm not, obviously. Like, I'm not a magician.
Hmm.
Or they feel that I just can't drop in, quote unquote, deep enough. I am too in my head, which really is not a hindrance. That's what your head is for. But, if that's the way you feel, then breath work might be more for you. Um, some other things is, you said over hypnotherapy. I mean, they're kind of, I would say those are the main ones that I would really go to.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. What are some of the influences on your work? Like who have you worked with, or who do you look up to as I don't know, a mentor or someone that you align
Yeah,
with?
so I'm a recent graduate of the neurodynamic breathwork program, which is out in California, and the teachers there and the founder, they actually are all Stan Grof holotropic breathwork trained. They
Hmm.
developed this program and this process about 5 years ago, because as you may or may not know, holotropic breathwork is it's kind of a long process, and particularly if you're doing workshops, it involves having a sitter and a breather, and so each person's supposed to breathe for 3 hours. So that takes 6 hours. Plus, you need to eat in between. And it also involves doing a specific type of art therapy, which is mandala drawing. So a typical holotropic breathwork is quite costly, and it typically lasts about 12 hours, and they only did it in person. So Michael Stone developed this idea of, well, what if we did this online? And I guess everybody was like, no, that can't be done. That's not safe and all that. So of course there are some differences. We typically do not have breathers and sitters. It can be done, of course. We breathe for an hour to 90 minutes, depending. The breath work or the music for the breath work does follow the same stand graph because that was scientifically proven. And it is that alone was an intense study of the music and how to put that together. And then we suggest different integrative techniques, but we do not require you to do a mandala. So you might journal, you might go, out in nature, whatever kind of works for you.
Okay, got it. I was curious about where neurodynamic came from, like what the lineage is. So that's really helpful. And did you have experience with holotropic breathwork before you decided to jump into the neurodynamic?
Yeah, so there's not here in Tampa, Florida, there's not any workshops that I was able to find. But of course, I read all the Stan Grof books and I was like, oh, I wish I could afford that, plane ticket over to Rome to go, or actually to do the holotropic breath work is a 9-month process that involves like living on campus for 4 months. So, if I wanted to train with them, that'd be even more special. I'd have to
Mhm.
quit my job and my business and my life. So, I experimented with a couple of these other types of breath work, and it's very similar, but I really liked how safe and how much scientific research and how much there was with the neurodynamic, and that they were all the holotropic people.
So what is a practical way that someone can use breathwork to improve their life?
Oh my goodness, there are so many. So it really depends on what you're coming in with. If you have really, if you have a blockage, or you feel a blockage, or you feel like, oh, I can't get over this, there's so many of those kind of things. It can be used to just experience things. It can be used to let go of things. So there's not really a one answer for that. It's really where you are. Of course, you have to be in a certain level of good health. You can't have certain conditions to do this kind of work. That's really the one thing that, but even if you don't even have anything, if you just want to experience it, because we really do, neurodynamic really says not to go in with an expectation. It's okay if you have a kind of general intention, but if you're like, I'm going to go to a past life and stop this or that, so that's not really, it may or may not happen, but you might be kind of setting yourself up to not drop in and do whatever needs to really be done if you think you know.
So I guess what I hear from that then is you know that there's something holding you back. You might know what it is, or you don't know what it is, and so you
Mhm.
go into this with the intention of like releasing something like that. Is that kind of the idea that you would go? So not saying
That's a more
these are.
typical. Yeah, I mean, I've done so there was a time that I had like so women are so funny, I had this like best friend kind of breakup, like, we were like in the same industry, and then things went awry. And so I like really couldn't talk about it because honestly I like don't want to like be that nasty woman or something like that. So I came home and I did this like breathwork session where I'm like, I just want to get through this or whatever. I don't want to feel this, like whether it be anger or, sadness or fear. And I mean, I was like probably screaming and throwing my pillows for like 2 hours of breathing. But afterwards, I was like, I had an experience that I had no idea what was going to happen. I had an experience where like we were in a past life together, and I had kind of done something to her, and she, kind of stabbed me and stuff like that, like this weird stuff. Another time, let's see, another time I just felt like really, really like this tension, and like I was like nasty, just like I was like ready to, it was cranky, So I breathed and I just like had this physical release, like my muscles like just like shook, and I got all this tetany and stuff. And then when it was over, I was like, oh, I feel like I had a massage. My partner's like, you should do that more often.
Would you talk a little bit about the what did you call it?
Yeah, tetany. So tetany is
Tetany?
something. So it's funny. A lot of times, breathwork facilitators will say, "Oh," or they won't say anything, which is even worse. But they'll say, oh, it really doesn't happen that often, or it really only happens to first time breathers. Well, I've been doing breath work, the same kind of style of breath work, for about 10 years. I almost always get tetany. Now, I no longer get upset or scared by it, but so tetany is technically, and it's not like the kind of tetany where you need to go get a tetanus shot. That's what people always ask me. It's really your muscles are kind of tensing up, and it typically happens like crab hands, but it can happen all over. It can happen in the jaw. Um, and it is very uncomfortable. It can even be very painful at first. But typically, what happens is you kind of panic about that, and that makes it worse because you're resisting. And so, one of the principles of neurodynamic is what you resist persist. And so, if you any kind of experience you have in the breathwork, if you intensify it, that's going to push you through for the most part. And we also have a couple different like release work techniques for in-person kind of sessions. But if you're kind of resisting, you're going to make it worse. So the best thing you can do is kind of just relax into it and feel a sense of curiosity. And it typically goes away. And I mean, honestly, I've never left like with crab hands that I couldn't drive. The second you stop the breathing, it's going to dissipate within a few moments. But of course, then you've done all this work and had that experience and not got where you felt you wanted to go. So pushing through is amazing. And now I honestly, I am very analytical sometimes. So I enjoy when I experience the tetany, because I know that that is my mind and my body's way of being like, okay, here we go. Because the second I let go from that, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to let whatever happens happen, the tetany goes away and I travel. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I usually get that too when I'm
Do
doing
you?
breath work. Yeah. What are there any risks that people need to know about when they're working with their breath?
So there's not any risk as long as you're considered healthy enough to do the work. Of course, we don't want you to do the work. I'm not going to see somebody under the age of 18. Some folks do. I don't see hypnotherapy clients under the age of 18 either, except for very rare occasions. We wouldn't want you to do this breathwork if you had an aneurysm, if you had, glaucoma, aneurysm, glaucoma, cardiac, uncontrolled high blood pressure, the typical kind of things that would be. And if you do think that you're healthy enough, you're still going to get a doctor to say that, and the doctor has to understand what the breath work is, kind of thing, because what it is doing is changing the pressure in your brain. It's changing of course, pregnancy is a big one too, because you're changing your blood from the normal to more alkaline, which is healthy, of course, for a regular person, but not for a fetus or something like that. So provided you don't have any of and there's a long list of contraindications, not that long, but there's some that are judgment calls, if you will, that require a medical referral. So for instance, PTSD, this kind of breath work is very, very good for PTSD. But if you're not aware of what's going to happen, or you don't have a support group, and not so good, you have to have somebody to go home and process with. Of course, we're not going to do it for schizophrenia, bipolar, same with hypnosis. But a lot of the things are just, if you have osteoporosis to the point where like breathing or moving might hurt your bones, those kind of things. So a lot of it is very common sense if you're, trained in it and stuff like that too. If you just had a surgery, because you do move a lot, and it's hard work, like I said. So.
Okay. So if you're generally healthy, it's not usually an issue, but if you have one of these types of possible
If you're generally healthy, it's actually good for you. We do so many things that acidify our bodies, all the toxins we take in just breathing some of the air, when it's not. And so that is not good for us. So, eating kale is alkalizing. The Wim Hof, going into the ice baths, the cryotherapy alkalizes your blood. So alkalizing is really good for you. So even if you felt like absolutely nothing happened and you did a session, your body, your blood is getting this healthful response, kind of thing.
Are there other health benefits that you get from the breath work?
I think there's a lot of them. So scientifically, there's the alkalosis kind of thing. There's the release too. Some folks, they feel like they don't do anything. So it is possible to kind of drop into a trance-like state where you kind of almost stop breathing. It sounds scary, but it's yoga nidra is basically what it is, yogic sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is healing too. You're kind of getting, because your inner guiding intelligence is going to lead you to whatever experience you need. If you're over sleep deprived and it's not good for your body to breathe, then you might get that experience. And so folks might say, oh, I feel like nothing happened, I was sleeping. But stuff is still releasing because your mind and your body moved you into basically delta sleep waves a 90-second or 90-minute period while you're doing this breath work. So you're really getting a lot of benefits. To say exactly who gets what, that's not my job.
Okay. And then what do you, I know, so you're in a lot of these different spaces of healing, a lot of them having to do with trance states, right? So hypnosis, you're taking somebody into a hypnotic trance. With neurodynamic breath work, their breath is taking them into a trance. You might even say when you're working with somebody with Reiki or even in yoga, they're going into a certain state of consciousness in those types of things. What's making you excited about the future of altered states of consciousness and personal growth?
I feel that one of my main excitements for myself is that it's so natural. And so there's so many medications. I'm not saying medication is bad. There are medications that should be taken and need to be taken, but there are so many that statistically say the placebo effect is the same, or you take this medication and the side effects require you to take another medication. So I feel the more that we can do on our own naturally, the better we are. I mean, who needs to put drugs into their system if they don't really need them? It also empowers people because people feel broken. They feel like they need someone else to fix them. I'm not fixing anybody. I'm sitting here and holding space. Now, that is very healing. Sometimes, a doctor doesn't have the time. I'm not saying doctors are bad. It's just the way the system works. So, I mean, I can sit here, and if somebody needs me to hold their hand or to cover them or to give them water because they have tetany when they're breathing, that can kind of make them feel, even more empowered because they're not, being told you're broken or feeling like, and if they didn't have, they call it, trauma of omission. If they didn't have enough touch when they were young, well, they're in the breath work because they're in this expanded state. It is okay and considered normal for someone to be like, and we have a contract, of course, because you don't want to just do this when they're in an expanded state. But beforehand, say I really need someone to hold my hand, or maybe to kind of, appropriately hold me or hug me, or, with a pillow or whatever it is, or to kind of swaddle me kind of thing. And so that can just be even more healing. It can heal things from past lives, past childhood kind of thing too. So I just feel that this is just such amazing work and so natural, and it's all within the person, the client. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. Ashley, what do you want to be remembered for?
oh gosh, I just want to be remembered for really holding space for folks and really being compassionate, and for honoring my own self and where I've come from, and saying you can do this too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so powerful when you've gone through, like, your story will resonate with a lot of people listening to this, I'm sure. Everyone has their own challenges, and to hear what you've gone through and the changes that you've made from being stuck in your home, right, unable to do anything,
And
to
then losing that, it wasn't even a house, it was an apartment, and then losing that because I couldn't
Uh-huh.
work. So.
Right, and here you are now, a business owner and doing all these different fantastic, amazing change work modalities and making a big impact on people's lives.
Thank you.
Ashley, if somebody wants to learn more about you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So probably the best way is to go on the website, which is going to be www.unwindthemind.com. And of course, I'm on all the social media, but that'll take anybody who's not to anywhere. They can also call too. The business phone is 727-871-3111. We're located in Tampa, Florida, but we do
Great.
Zoom.
And I know that you have a gift that you were offering. Can you tell us about the gift that you've put together for us?
Yeah, so it's a little opt-in gift. You'll have to follow a link that after you follow it, then there's a second link, of course. It'll ask for your email. So it's going to give you a hypnotic programming recording that I made about releasing limiting beliefs. I think it's about 25 or 28 minutes long. We ask you don't do that while you're driving the car or anything like that, of course. And then what it'll also give you, and you can opt out of this at any time if you want, is every Monday at noon, I do a Facebook Live, which then goes to all the other socials too, including YouTube and stuff. But that is called Mindful Monday, and it's a different topic. It's pretty short, but we also give you a PDF, a weekly PDF on the topic. So if you didn't want to watch or you don't want to be bothered with social media, you still get kind of a printout. So today's was about overcoming perfectionism. Last week's was about how to be more vulnerable. And so the whole Brene Brown was the past couple of weeks kind of thing, but it's always different. Sometimes we do a process and it is a little longer, but there's always that PDF cheat sheet to tell you how to do it on your own.
Nice. I will make sure that there are links to the website, to your social media, and to that recording, as well as the other ones that are applicable in the show notes.
Sweet. Thank you.
And Ashley, what's the one thing that you would like the listeners to leave with today?
I think that probably if I were to talk about neurodynamic breathwork, the two main principles that we follow is probably the best that you can do. And that's to trust that you have this inner guiding intelligence. Just that if I were to get a little paper cut, I don't have to consciously think about sending white blood cells there to prevent infection, about clotting agents there to stop the bleeding, about all this stuff. It just happens naturally. And we believe our psyches have that same kind of ability for the most part. Of course, there are the deeper issues, but for the most part, we have this inner guiding intelligence. And the second is to just surrender to who you are, to where you are, to the process kind of thing.
Fantastic advice, both of that. Thank you so much for your time today, Ashley. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please go ahead and leave me a 5-star review on this podcast. That's really the best way to expand this message, and it would mean a lot to me. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on YouTube so you can stay up to date with Super States. Also, let me know what kind of topics or guests you'd like me to cover in future episodes. You can just respond in the comments below. You can also find me on nearly all the social media sites out there at Joshua Ray Peters. That's Rey. I promise I'll answer your comments. I'll see you all next week. Remember now, you carry the seeds of change inside. So stay curious, keep growing, and embrace your transformation.